This scene is a perfect showcase of why Ethan is not only directly connected to the monsters, but also that his presence in the town is absolutely necessary for Fromland to keep functioning properly.
We have to go right now.
What did you find?
A bag of teeth. Here, you should see them.
No.
He needs to be prepared. Everyone died, but not the boy. And he grew up alone and afraid, and now you're here, the boy and the girl again.
What does that mean?
The man in yellow is back. You have to know what's
You
coming.
need to stop. What's wrong with you?
Now, this moment between Victor, Tabitha, and Ethan contains by far one of the most important pieces of dialogue that we see in the entire show. Because what is said in this scene right here with these three characters makes it very clear that we have been experiencing an absolutely absurd level of deception and manipulation by this place since the very first moment that we entered the town, and honestly, it was probably happening even long before that. Like, what I want you to pay attention to here is that Victor tells Tabitha that the last time she came into the town, i.e. when she came as Victor's mother, that she had also come with a boy and a girl as her children, just like how she came in now with Ethan and Julie. And just like what happened then, the man in yellow showed up and eventually everyone died, but not the boy, which was Victor himself. And therefore, that Ethan has to be prepared for what's coming, that Ethan has to be prepared for the next part of the story, which is when everyone dies, and the boy, which is going to be Ethan this time, remains as the only survivor of the town. In other words, what Victor is really saying in this scene is that based on what he saw happening when he was a child, there is nothing that is really different about this cycle when compared to the last one. Hence, Victor believes this cycle will also have the same exact ending as the last one. Like, I really feel like people are not really thinking about what this scene actually means, because the implications of what we see Victor saying in this scene are actually massive in so many different ways that it's crazy. Like, think about this. In this cycle, we've seen Boyd finding the talismans, we've seen Boyd killing a monster, we've seen Tabitha killing a monster as well, we've seen Tabitha getting to the lighthouse, and we've also seen Tabitha supposedly escape the town and then come back into the town for a second time. But yet, despite all of these things that have happened to the people of this town in this cycle, Victor still believes that nothing they have done so far actually separates them from any of the cycles that came before them. And we know for a fact that this is what Victor believes because he specifically says that Ethan has to be prepared to be the only survivor, which means that everything Victor is seeing right now lines up extremely similarly with whatever was happening in the town when he was a child 40 years ago that led up to his massacre. But there is actually something else that is far more significant in that piece of dialogue that we saw from Victor that way too many people keep ignoring. And that is that Victor saying Ethan has to be prepared for what's coming implies that Victor himself wasn't even the first or even the second boy to have survived the massacre. And therefore that this role, which is now supposed to be played by Ethan, is actually as inherent a part of the cycle as people being ripped apart by the monsters. Like, just watch this scene right here and you will start to see what I'm talking about.
Hey, Victor. I was aboard. A man jumped from here. He hated this place so much. It took days for him to finally die. So he's trying to fix things. They just made them worse. What I told my dad, I shouldn't have told him any of that.
I definitely believe that the meaning of this scene has been greatly underestimated by everyone in this community to an insane degree. Because this moment in the dialogue that we see here is massive for us to understand why Victor clearly was not the first person to have played this role of the boy, and now Ethan is also supposed to play that role. A lot of people take this scene to be referring to someone that was the leader of the town when Victor was a child, much like Boyd is doing now in the current time. But there's actually a lot showing that this person that Victor described throwing themselves off the roof in an attempt to try to take themselves out is actually meant to be a parallel to the role played by Victor and therefore also the role played by Ethan. And we know this to be true because of three very simple facts that I'm going to be explaining to you very clearly in a moment. The first thing to keep in mind here is that Victor specifically says when he's describing what happened to this person after he jumped off the roof of Colony House and splattered on the ground, that this person, whoever he was just laying there, but he was still alive, seemingly crippled and immobilized for multiple days before he eventually died. This means that the Nightwalkers did not finish him off when they came out and saw him laying there for multiple nights in a row. Obviously, this is one of the biggest hints that this person, whoever they were, was clearly playing the same role as Victor, because just like how the Nightwalkers have clearly refused to kill Victor in the last 40 years, they also refused to kill this person who jumped off the roof, despite the fact that they could have easily done so because he was completely essentially unable to move for multiple days until he died. This makes it very clear that this person is clearly a parallel to Victor, and more than likely had also been in the town for multiple decades since he was a child, after surviving a massacre. But the golden goose in how we know that this person is meant to be a predecessor to Victor, and therefore Ethan as well, is that when Victor is describing this story, he himself was about to jump off the roof, which Boyd had to stop him from doing. Basically, this is yet another way the writers want us to see that Victor was clearly playing the same role as the guy who died by jumping off the roof, because they intentionally had Victor trying to do the same exact thing. It also has to be mentioned that it was specifically stated that this person he described just wanted to help, but it felt like everything he was doing just ended up making things worse. This is very similar to how Victor showed his dad the drawing of his mom being eaten by the man in yellow, because he was just trying to help, but it just ended up making things infinitely worse, because his dad could not handle that information. And then in the junkyard, we see Victor wanting to help Ethan be prepared, just to have Tabitha screaming at him, asking him if there was something wrong with him. Basically, just like his predecessor who jumped off the roof, Victor is desperately trying to help them, but he constantly feels like he's just making things worse. This is part of the story of the boy. It's part of the torment designed specifically by the entity for that role played by Victor. And eventually, Ethan is also intended to experience that same suffering. And this could also explain why Victor's drawing of his mother being eaten by the man in yellow shows her wearing a white dress. But we've clearly seen in Tabitha's vision of how Victor's mother died that she clearly wasn't wearing anything even close to a white dress. Something also supported by Victor's own memories of his mother in the root cellar right before she set out to go to the bottle tree. And this could also tie into the scene in the trailer where we see Tabitha getting choked out, because there is also a drawing of a woman in a white dress in that scene with the word mom written right above her, i.e. that Victor's memory of his mother being eaten while wearing a white dress actually belongs to someone else that previously played the role of the boy who survives the massacre and not Victor himself. But what you really need to understand about what's going on here is that if the man who threw himself off the roof really was also playing the role of the boy, it would mean that Victor's survival wasn't some sort of anomaly or some 400 IQ strategy designed to make sure that the cycle afterwards would succeed, but that his survival and existence actually serves the exact opposite goal, to make sure that the people of the town would never be able to win the game. This would also mean that the boy in white was never trying to help anybody go back home, that the only reason he keeps people like Victor and Ethan alive is because their role is necessary for the continued existence of Fromland. And this is why you need to watch what I'm about to show you very closely.
None of them are ripped apart. They weren't killed by the creatures in the woods. These men were murdered by the people in town.
I warned you. The answers you sought come wrapped in painful truths. It's always the same. Once they learn the truth about who you are, that it was you that the children were calling for, eventually they kill you.
Now, what we see here is one of the biggest signs that Victor's survival and therefore the existence of the role of the boy is actually just an extremely normal part of the cycle, and that there is nothing unique about it in any way. Like, what I want you to really focus on in this scene with the 12-year-old Jade, the boy in blue, is that he specifically says that it's always the same, and Jade is always killed by the people of the town and not the monsters. The reason why this matters so much is that it directly implies that Tabitha and Jade recovering the memories of their past lives and their involvement in the child sacrifice, as well as them telling the people of the town about it, like what happened in the current show, is nothing new, and that it's something that happens in every cycle. Because I really want you to remember what the 12-year-old Jade boy in blue said. He specifically says that Jade is only killed by the townspeople after they learn the truth about who he really is. And when you combine that fact with how all of these versions of Jade are shown playing the violin, it starts to become very clear that Jade playing the violin at the bottle tree is something that happens in every cycle. Like, even to this day, we still do not know who places the bottles on the bottle tree, but it's very likely that they're actually placed there by the entity himself in every single cycle. Basically, what I'm really trying to say here is that just like the role that we know as the boy who survives the massacre, which is currently played by Victor and eventually will be played by Ethan, Jade and Tabitha remembering their past lives is something that happens in every cycle. In other words, there's not really anything that the people of this town have done so far that actually sets them apart from any of the people that have ever lived in the town before. And when you start looking at things from that perspective in particular, it actually makes a lot of sense for Victor to have come to the conclusion that this cycle is going to end in the same exact way as the last one did. But this is barely even scratching the surface with how badly we are being played by the entity in control of the monsters. Like, just watch this scene and see for yourself.
But what happened to Tilly?
That happened because the baby was scared. You weren't feeding it. It was hungry. The sooner you eat, the stronger the baby will be. And before you know it, we'll be going home.
Now, the meaning of this scene is something that has been overlooked by way too many people, but it's actually really important. But to understand what it actually means, I want you to think about what we see happening after Kenny attacked the milkman with the voodoo totem. We saw Fatima controlling Smiley and stopping him from seemingly killing Kenny, right? Well, now I want you to think about what Elgin said to Fatima about why Tilly died. Elgin specifically said that it was Fatima's demonic baby who killed Tilly because it wanted to defend itself from what it perceived as a threat. Think about what this means. It means that Smiley, who was the demonic baby in Fatima's belly, also has the ability to control Fatima. And this level of control he has over her is so strong that he can make her kill people even when she doesn't want to. And we also know this to be the case because even in this very season, Fatima has said multiple times that her connection with Smiley goes both ways. The reason why this matters is that it reinforces a point I've been trying to make ever since we saw that scene. Her connection to Smiley is not a good thing in any way. Like what that scene where she stops Smiley would initially lead you to believe. The entity only allowed her to do that, to give her hope that she can actually make a difference, so that he can eventually take it away and turn it into pure despair. And there's so many different ways that he can use it against her. Like, you know, making her kill her husband Ellis would be the first thing that comes to mind. Like, all of what we're looking at here is part of a plan designed by the same being that is in control of the monsters to destroy the people of this town and make them suffer as much as possible. Even when you look at what's happening with Victor's dad, now we know why the Nightwalkers did not attack Tabitha and Victor's dad in the ambulance on the night they arrived into town, despite the fact that they clearly knew he was in there. Because it's very clear to me now that the only reason he was brought into the town is to torture Victor one last time and squeeze as much suffering out of him as possible before they kill him off and replace him with Ethan. The entire thing was always a setup. Even when you look at what's going on with Tabitha right now, it's very clear that she is also being deceived in more ways than one. So go watch this video right here to see my explanation of how Tabitha clearly has had fake memories intentionally implanted into her brain by the entity himself in order to guarantee that this cycle would have the same ending as the last one.